No, it's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful life. And as I think about coming to the end of this year, this is December, and we're coming to the end of this year, and this is the year that we have spent dwelling in the land of plenty. Dwelling in the land of plenty. How many people are dwelling in the land of plenty and have been this year? How many people are willing to dwell in the land of plenty? How many people are going to continue to dwell in the land of plenty as we go throughout this next year that's coming up? Because we wanted to get there, and then we wanted to be there, then we want to dwell there. And that's what we've been doing month after month after month, just learning different tools and really being reminded of the practices and principles of the science of mind that allow us to dwell in the land of plenty, that allow us to be in that consciousness. That's what the land is, our consciousness, that we know that we can have a consciousness in a place where we can thrive, and we can grow, and we can expand, and we can be all that we were created to be. This is what the land of plenty is all about. And that's what we've been doing as we've gone through many of our 7 sacred practices this year, and we've gone through other tools and principles that we've talked about and that we've been putting into practice, right? Putting into practice. And that's what we want to continue to do, put those things into practice so that we can continue to dwell in the land of plenty as we go through this month and then into the next year. It's a wonderful life. I don't know that there's anybody on the planet who hasn't seen that movie. Because at one time, anytime in December, the movie It's a Wonderful Life is on every channel. Now, there was some copyright issues that came up back in the 70s, I think, and then they couldn't show it on just regular TV stations, so you had to kind of go to some of the streaming services to get to see it again, so you don't see it quite as often. And then back maybe about 20 years ago or so, copyright was reinstated, and so now you get to see it more often. But everybody knows about the It's a Wonderful Life. And so when I was seeing it the other day, I thought, this is a wonderful life. That's a wonderful thing for us to be reminded of this month as we go through this last month of the year, that it really is a wonderful life. And sometimes we forget that because of all the stuff that we get caught up in, all of our busyness and all of the issues and the challenges and all the things that when life happens, we forget that it's a wonderful life. And so this month, we're going to be talking about just the things that can remind us that this really is a wonderful life and how we can live a wonderful life. And so I invite you to breathe. That's one way to really live a wonderful life, is just taking a breath and just kind of stepping back. And today, well, one of the things I want to say about a wonderful life, the theme of that movie, the message from that movie is that your life matters. Your life matters. Your life matters because, if you can remember, George Bailey, as I recall his name, was thinking that his life didn't matter, that he should never have been born. And so the angel came in to show, Clarence came in to show him all the things that would have happened had he not stepped in, had he not been there, had he not been born. And so the message was, your life matters. And I think that's the message for each of us, is to remember that our lives matter, that my life matters. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think, I'm just one person. Sometimes we think, my little life. Sometimes we think, I haven't done anything really big. I haven't accomplished anything. I haven't done whatever. The criticisms, that voice, that critic that's in our heads sometimes makes us think that it doesn't matter what we do, that it doesn't make a difference what we do. And last month we spent the month talking about we can change the world by consciously choosing, just in our own little lives, our own big lives, we can make a difference. And so just keeping in mind, I'm going to be reminding you throughout the month that your life matters. Your life does matter. My life matters. And we keep that in our focus, then we can move through our lives with ease and with grace and with purpose and with presence. And that's where we want to be, in a place where we can move through our lives with presence and being fully present in our lives. And so today I'm talking about the gift of a day off. The gift of a day off. The gift of a day off. Oh, yeah, somebody's happy. And this is inspired by this book, 24/6, The Power of Unplugging One Day a Week. It's by Tiffany Shalane. And she's a tech person. And she's really talking about unplugging from the tech world. She's really talking about unplugging from technology. She's really talking about unplugging from anything, those things that take our focus, that take our attention, that take our time, that take our energy, that keeps us from being present. And there's nothing that does that like technology. There's nothing that does that like our cell phones. There's nothing that does that like our computers or our iPads or whatever, our tablets or whatever it is that keeps us plugged in. And the more we stay plugged in, the less we stay present. The more we stay plugged in, the less we stay present. And so I invite you, this book is in the bookstore, I invite you to take a look at it. Whether you are that plugged into technology or not, there are really good points in there for any area of our lives that interfere with us being fully present. Anything that takes away our focus, anything that takes away our awareness of ourselves, our awareness of the presence, our awareness of our connection with the whole, our awareness of the connection with God and with all that, the all that is. And so take a look at this book. Think about the gift of a day off, because this is the month of gift giving. And so we'll be talking throughout the month about different gifts that we can give ourselves so that we can really begin to appreciate what a wonderful life this is. And so the beauty of a day off, the gift of a day off, is one, from technology. I had several people tell me over the holiday, well, Thanksgiving Day, I was here for a wonderful dinner we had here. So many people were here. And it was really great to be here on Thanksgiving Day. But people were telling me that they took, and the day after, were telling me that they had baskets in their homes. When people came in for dinner, they were collecting cell phones. And everybody had to put their phone in a basket. Nobody could take them into the house. Nobody could take them to the dinner table, which means that people had to actually sit there and be with each other. Isn't that something? Because, now when we go any place, we see people, even at restaurants, there are two people at a table, both of them sitting there looking at their phones. Or if there's a family, all four of them, or all six of them, however many, all of them have their phones out. And they're looking at them, and they're punching on them, and they're leaning over, and nobody's talking to anybody. And that's how our lives have come to be. Because we get so used to being available all the time, we get so used to being on all the time, that we don't have any time off. We don't have any time off. And so I thought that was a great idea to have people just collecting phones when people come in. So no phones in the house while we're going through this dinner or this family time or this meal time or this connecting time that we have set aside on this Thanksgiving Day. And so what I'm inviting you to do, and what the author of this book invites us to do, is to have one day a week. She's Jewish, and she bases this on Shabbat and the Sabbath, the day of rest, having one day a week. And she and her husband have been doing this for over 10 years now. It may have been even longer than that. But they've been, on Friday evening, they unplug. And they don't plug up again until Saturday night. And their children do this. Their teenagers do this, even when their kids were young doing this. And she talks about the difference that it really makes in their lives, because they set aside this time, that this is a time that we unplug. This is a time that we set aside to be fully present to whatever it is we want to be present for. And what a difference it has made in their lives. She talks about her, maybe 15, 20 years ago, she found out she was pregnant. The same day that she found out her father was dying of some disease. He had been given 9 months to live. And so she spent that time being present with him as she was going through this pregnancy. And when her daughter was born, her father passed on. And so she really got in touch with what it really means to be present, what it really means, and what's really important in our lives. And that's what we can do when we start to unplug and to look up. Because, you know, we're so used to looking down now, looking down at these phones, looking down at these iPads, looking down at whatever it is, or taking this phone call. So we're not connecting with what's right before us. We're not aware of what's going on, not only with our connections with each other, but our connections with ourselves. Because all these things interfere with our time with ourselves. And so I'm inviting you to take a day off. One day of rest. That's why the book is called 24/6 instead of 24/7. 24/6 instead of 24/7. And she says when we practice 24/6, then we can live 24/7. We get to live 24/7 when we give ourselves the gift of a day off. And so because the whole idea is to really be in touch with who we really are, really get in touch with what we really want, really get in touch with how we live our lives. If there's anything in your life that interferes with your being able to be fully present, with your being able to be aware of the power and the presence of God that is in our midst, with your being able to connect with family, friends, with your being able to connect with yourself on a regular basis, that's the thing we need to unplug from. That's the thing we need to unplug from. So maybe you're not on social media a lot. Maybe you don't do work in the tech field. Maybe you're not on your phone a lot. That may not be what applies to you, but there's something that each of us does. There's something that takes our focus, takes our attention, takes our time, takes our energy. There's something that keeps us from being fully present. And so what I'm inviting you today is to really look at what is it that takes my attention? What is it that I need to unplug from? What is it that I need to unplug from? Maybe it's the TV. Maybe it's the TV. Maybe it's the telephone. Maybe it's gossiping. Maybe it's being resentful. Maybe it's being resistant. Whatever it is that closes us up, closes us off, let's take a real look at it. What is it that keeps me from being fully present? What is it that keeps me from living my life fully? What is it that keeps me from being in a place of reflection? Keeps me in a place of balance. Maybe it's unplugging from politics. Yeah. Sometimes I get caught up in watching what's going on, and then I realize, oh my gosh, this is really a lot. But I want to know what's going on. But at some point, you have to unplug from it. And I was thinking about it over the weekend that I generally will unplug on the weekends because they're just rehashing what happened during the week. So what I really need is some time during the week to unplug when something's going on. To just unplug, to step back, to regroup. Because when we get caught up in these things, researchers say that when we are so caught up in the addiction to cell phones and technology and all that stuff, it's very, very similar to the addiction to drugs and alcohol. Isn't that something? Very similar to the addiction to drugs and alcohol. And so we get, because addiction is addiction. It doesn't matter what the substance is. Addiction is addiction. It's the effect it has. It's the effect it has on our brains. It's the effects it has on us in the way we live our lives. And you know, the way we go through our days is the way we go through our lives. And so if we have day after day after day after day of doing something that has us all caught up, that has nothing to do really with enhancing our lives and who we are, then that's something we want to take a look at. That's something we want to take a look at. And so I invite you to really discover what is it that you need to unplug from once a week, one day a week. And if you can't do it a whole day, start out doing, because if you don't do it for an hour, you can't do it for a day. Right? You got to be able to do it for an hour. You got to be able to do it for 2 hours. You got to be able to do it for 3 hours, and just keep going and keep going and keep going until you can take a full 24 hours off from whatever it is. But I say go cold turkey. Go cold turkey. Just do it. Just decide, I'm not going to do this between Friday night and Saturday night, if that's the day that you choose to have a Shabbat, to have a rest, to have a time when you just say, you know what, this is a time that I'm going to take some time off from. And for me, it's going to be politics. I need to take a break. I need to take a break sometimes. Because I don't care when I plug back in, I can hear it again. Because they're going to tell me over and over, the same thing's going to be happening over and over. And so we have to just keep in mind the same thing about not only politics, other things in our lives that we get caught up in. And so deciding what is it that you need to take a break from. And then deciding also what day that will be for you. And make it a regular practice. That's the second thing I want you to keep in mind. After you decide what it is you're going to take a break from, make it a regular practice. Make it a part of your practice. Make it a spiritual practice. Let unplugging become a spiritual practice. A part of your spiritual practice. Think of all the things we can do when we're unplugged. We can think. We can read. We can rest. We can go for a walk. We can connect with friends and family. Okay, this bracelet doesn't want to cooperate. So we can connect with friends and family. We can connect with the people. We can make eye contact when we're out with people. And you know, I was reading that eye contact is the first and last form of communication that we have. Eye contact is the first and last form of communication that we have. Think about that. Eye contact. And this is what she discusses in this book, the fact that she was so close to her father and how much they loved to talk and loved to share. And he reached the point just before he passed on that he couldn't talk, but they made eye contact. And she could see how much he just wanted to communicate more with her, how much he wanted to talk with her, but he couldn't talk any longer. And she was saying that eye contact is the first and last communication that we have. And so how important that is for us to make eye contact with each other, to us to really connect with each other. These are the kinds of things we can do when we unplug because we are fully present, because we are fully aware. We're fully aware. And so we can connect with each other. We can see each other. We can recognize each other. We can honor each other. We can even do that with ourselves, just looking in the mirror and making eye contact. When's the last time you made eye contact with yourself in the mirror? When's the last time you did that? Because usually we're looking here or there, or whatever part we don't really like, we look at the other part. So just making eye contact with each other and talking to ourselves, talking to that inner self, reflecting on what kind of life do I want to live? What kind of life do I want to live? How do I want my life to look? What do I want to do here on this planet? How do I want to be? Remembering that we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe, governed by spiritual law. Remembering that we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law. We forget that because we get caught up in all the other stuff. When we remember that we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law, then we start to live our lives differently. We start differently. We start to walk in a different way. We start to talk in a different way. We start to think in a different way. Because we start to reflect on what that really means. What does that really mean? What does that mean for me? If I know that I'm a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law, how do I live my life differently than when I think that my life is governed by all these other things in the material world? this gives us a chance to reflect. We don't have time to reflect on that when we're caught up in things that take our focus, when we're caught up in things that don't really matter that much. It gives us a chance to shift our perspective. We talked about shifting perspective a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how when we shift our perspective, we see things differently. We begin to act differently. We begin to focus on the big picture rather than on little things, the little things that can skew our perception of our lives, or skew our perception of the world. I remember when my daughter was little, I used to take her on trips, and we could go on vacations and all kinds of little things we'd do. And I'd always take a camera so we could take pictures of everything. This is before cell phones. But I took a camera, and when we get the film developed, all of our pictures had this thing in the corner, in the bottom corner. And I was always so upset because no matter how beautiful the pictures were, there was this thing, and I couldn't figure out what on earth is it that every camera I had, I then started to buy those throwaway cameras, and every camera I had, every camera I had something wrong with it because it had this thing in the bottom of the photograph. And so I'd focus on that. And my sister was visiting us at some point, and I showed her some pictures, and she says, "Why is it that all the pictures you take have your thumb in the bottom?" And I said, "Where's my thumb?" She said, "Right there, every picture you take, I noticed you have your thumb in the bottom of the photograph. Why can't you just move your thumb out of the lens?" Well, that was just a real epiphany for me. I had no idea. That was revolutionary thinking. Is that my thumb? But you know what? The point that I'm making is that my perspective was governed by that thing, because that's where my focus went. And every time I got pictures from the drugstore, I couldn't wait to get them out to see if that thing was going to be there. And it was always there, and I couldn't figure out what's wrong with all the cameras. Well, it was my thumb, and so once I moved it, then I could see the whole picture. But I couldn't see the whole picture because it's just a little bit in the corner. But all the beauty, I missed all the beauty of the photograph, of the scenery, because I was focused on that little thing in the corner of my pictures. That may sound a little crazy to you. It probably was. But just think about how we get focused on those little things, that little thumb in the corner. And when there's all this beauty here. And so when we can learn to focus our attention on what's really important, and we can do that when we take a day off, because when we take a day off, we can decide what's important in our lives. That little thing in the corner doesn't mean anything. You got this whole big picture right here. You can see the mountains all out here, and this little thing in the corner down here doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. And so that's what we want to really be aware of as we go through our lives, as we go through this gift of a day off. In our day off, we can decide where our attention is going to be, where our time is going to be, where our energy is going to be, where our focus is going to be. And we can do this, as I said, by making this a spiritual practice, taking this day off. And let your friends and family know, this is my day off. You can decide you don't want to talk to anybody that day. You can decide you want to spend a day in silence, or spend a day on a retreat, or spend a day just with yourself, or spend that day with family and friends. You can decide that on your own. But this is a gift. It's a gift. It's a gift that we can give ourselves, the gift of a day off. A day off from those things that don't serve us well, or whatever the case may be. You decide. And this is how we get to that whole wonderful life thing, recognizing how wonderful this life is. How wonderful this life is. And so I invite you to just decide how you want your world to be, how you want your life to be. And first thing you have to do is to start to see it right. We can't set it right until we can see it right. We have to be able to see it the way we want it. We have to be able to see the world the way we want it. We have to be able to see our lives the way we want them so that we can set them the way we want them. But we can't do any of that unless we take some time out, unless we take a day off, unless we take the time to allow that guidance and that direction that is always available to us to come to the forefront. You know, I'm always saying to you, do what is before you to do. Do what is before you to do. Take a breath. Do what is before you to do. But you know, you can't know what's before you to do always, but when you can take that break, when you can take that day off, you will be guided. You will be able to see what is before you to do. You will be able to understand what is before you to do. It keeps you in the moment. It keeps you in the present. It keeps you available. It keeps you open. And it keeps us being that place and space through which Spirit works, being that place and space through which God can really just flow, being that place and space through which all good things happen, being that place and space for the healing of this world. It happens through each of us, to the degree that we're open to it, to the degree that we're available to it, to the degree that we're aware of it, to the degree that we're willing to allow it to happen in and through and as our individual lives. And so take a day off. Take a day off. Even as we go into this busy holiday season, take a day off. Give yourself that gift. Let that become your spiritual practice, that day of rest, and whatever that looks like for you in your own individual life. You don't have to make excuses, because we can always find reasons why we can't do it. That's called excuses. But look for the reasons why you can. Look for the time that you can do it. Give yourself the gift of a day off, and then recognize that it really is a wonderful life, because we get to appreciate it more. We get to understand it's really a wonderful life. Your life matters. Let's take a breath and turn within. And so as we move into that place and space where we know absolutely that God is, deep within each of us, God is. All around us, God is. Everywhere, God is. There is no spot where God is not. And so we just breathe in this moment of allowing this ever-present presence to be present within us right here and right now, right in our midst right now. And so just breathing into this moment, I'm knowing that this ever-present presence is my very life. This all-knowing presence is my very life and the life of each of us here this day. And so we open ourselves to this presence. We allow ourselves to be fully present for this presence and in this presence. We allow ourselves to be filled up with the presence of God. And as we do so, anything unlike that presence is dissolved into the nothingness from whence it came. So we just breathe fully. We breathe completely. As I speak this word for each of us this day, just speaking a word of blessing for each one of us. Just knowing that we are each blessed and we are blessings wherever we go, whatever we do. But knowing that the power and the presence of God is right where we are always, in every way, in all ways. And so as I open this circle of prayer, I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer. You may speak their names silently or loud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them, just as God is right where we are. God is everywhere. In the midst of every circumstance, every situation, every event, God is. That's all we ever need to know. And so I give great, great thanks as this word goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day. I know that God is right there. Just as God is right here, for every place is here. Every time is now. Thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you, Infinite Presence. Thank you, Divine Mother. I just allow it to be now, knowing indeed that all is well. And so it is.